What's going on, everybody? We are back with another episode of Instillment HQ. I am Reese.
I'm Ben.
And today, we are lucky enough to have JOLENE Costello here with us. How are you, JOLENE?
I am great. How are you, gentlemen?
We are
Fantastic.
Yes.
I like the slow clap. I was
thank
expecting
you.
something a little bit more, but it's fine. I'll
Okay.
take it.
I love it. Yeah, peaking like a...
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Yeah, so what's going on, JOLENE? How's life?
Oh, life is great. Couldn't be better.
Yeah?
Couldn't be better.
I love that. I love that. So, I mean, I guess as always, we like to talk to people about kind of what they're doing in their industry, what they've done, and we always find value in like what people are doing currently, right? So that's why you're here, because I've been inspired by you in the past. We've worked together, and so yeah, thank you so much for being on with us today.
Thank you for having me. And I have been equally inspired by you, so we obviously make a great team.
Oh my God, I fucking love it. Before we jump into what we've worked on together, do you want to give us maybe like a 5-minute summary of kind of like what you've done in the past, just to give people an idea about like what you're all about?
Sure. So as Reese mentioned, my name's JOLENE. I originally started in the fashion industry. That was one of my biggest accomplishments and probably the area where I grew the most, learned who I was, learned what I loved to do. I worked for a huge company, Michael Kors, for several years. From there, I wanted to try a little bit of the corporate lifestyle and something a little bit different than the hustle and bustle of sales. So I took a position with a company in Toronto, Carver & Associates, where I was a senior buyer. I did learn from them that buying is not my forte. A little bit boring for my personality. No offense to any buyer out there. It takes a special person, and that's just not me. But what I did realize is that I like to be around people, talking to people, selling to people, just around different kinds of energy.
Not you, no way.
You couldn't tell, right?
Low energy.
Yeah.
Then from there, my most recent position was with Ruth's Chris. I was their business development manager.
Amazing.
I got to find people, talk to people, sell the product, show them a great space, make them learn something that they didn't know was in the region, and that's something that really spoke to me and got me very energized every day with my job.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Love
Nice.
it. So, like, I remember when you kind of sent your thing over, you talked a little bit about learning so much from some of the top stylists in Montreal when you moved there. So, like, what are some of the things that you learned from them in terms of, like, you know, was it dealing with people? Was it sales? Like, what kind of stuck out to you in terms of...
Well, with the stylists I work with, when you're working with somebody who's so artistic, they have a hard time communicating their picture to you.
Right.
So working with them, you almost have to be able to read their, between the lines, read their signs.
Right.
They're not as outgoing and as flamboyant as you think they would be.
Yeah.
But from them, what I did learn is creating relationships with your clients are some of the most important and valuable things you'll ever learn when it comes to any sort of relationship you're trying to have with people.
Absolutely. 100%. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like that goes for us as well, right? Because I feel like sometimes maybe we're not working with the top stylists in Montreal, but we're working with clients who, you know, maybe struggle with getting their vision across. Not that they don't know what they want, but they don't know the proper
Absolutely. Yeah.
terminology.
They've never had that guidance before, and they exactly don't know the terminology, so they're fucking lost. So
Yeah, and then so like you said, you kind of have to read between the lines, ask the right questions, all that kind of stuff,
Exactly.
right? So yeah.
And
that's
I
awesome.
mean, when it comes to styling, you're working with different people. I worked with one gentleman, and he would style people from Celine Dion to, you know, people that were just starting out, and he would have to learn about them and show their personality through a picture or through what they're wearing. It takes a lot of patience.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of patience.
I can imagine.
Something I still don't think I have, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
you would not be able to deal with that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, like, did they ever give you any advice that, like, really stuck with you at all? Like, was there one piece of advice that maybe, like, you've been carrying with you since then?
One thing that he told me was to never, ever break a relationship with somebody. You don't realize how important relationships are and how much when you're working with people who are a little bit vulnerable, the trust needs to be there.
Right.
And I mean, I brought that with me even to Michael Kors. I worked with girls from the age of 16 up to, 45, and they had different problems going on in their life, and they just needed somebody that they could trust when it came to even talking about their personal life, or if they were having an issue in the store or whatever it would be. Trust is probably the top thing when working with other people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so what are like some of those steps to building that trust, would you say? Like, is it always knowing the right thing to say? Is it just being there? Is it like...
I mean, I don't think on any level do we always know the right thing to say. I mean, we're human and we're vulnerable ourselves, and we have things going on in our life. But I think building a relationship on trust, a lot can come from also showing your vulnerability and things that you may have going on in your life, and, showing them that you're not perfect. We are all human and we all have areas to grow in. And I think sometimes people forget that, and they put on this big facade that, I'm the head honcho and I'm this and I'm that, but it's not always about that. Some people are CEOs of companies or running big businesses, and their employees are all talking behind their back because they don't have any sort of relationship or trust with their boss.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I guess with being a good leader, you have to create those genuine connections. And it's funny because I just did a presentation at Crosley yesterday about leadership. And one of the things I talked about was making those genuine connections with your team members, because then they can trust you when you give like, hey guys, this is what we're doing. Okay. They know you're going to be there for them. And they're going to be there for you. Right. So
absolutely. I even experienced it with like being at Ruth's Chris. My clients, they would put these parties in my hands, and I had to take what they wanted and translate it. And, the day of their party, they would call and they'd be like, is everything going okay? Can you send me pictures? Can you do this? Calling me a million times. But they knew they could, and they knew that I always had their back.
You'd get it done.
And that is what is most important, I think, in any sort of business you're working with. So,
So, I mean, sorry to like jump around here, but I think like going off that topic, like, yeah, you build the trust, you do all this stuff, you communicate with your clients, you communicate with your team, but what about when things like don't go right? Then like, what happens then? Like, how do you, like, is there a way to like rebuild that trust? Is there a way to communicate? Like, is there a way to take that criticism? Because I know one thing you were talking about was like struggling with constructive criticism. And absolutely. I know Ben and I, for sure, being creatives, like everything's subjective, right? So you're always going to be under the microscope of people. Some people are not going to like it. Some people are going to love it. And no matter what, I feel like you have to move forward, right? So like, tell us maybe a little bit about your experience with like constructive criticism, maybe when things don't go always as planned.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is something you may not know about me, but I'm a little bit of a hothead.
No way. I never would have seen that.
And I'm not perfect, guys. I'm not perfect.
Tell me more. This is my first time meeting you. I'm interested now.
Yeah, I was going to say, talk as though you're talking to Ben, because I know.
So, with everything I'm saying, I am very competitive, and I do have a little bit of a temper.
Okay.
Now,
hold on to interrupt you there.
Should I duck
before we started this podcast, Jolene was asking so many questions, being like, what did this person say? How do I be better? Like, it's just like, just be yourself. It's okay. Yeah. No, I want to be the best.
I need to. I need to have
best.
Talking about structure. No.
Yes.
So, guys, you just called me out on this thing. Like,
no.
I had to. It's incredible, though. I love it.
It's okay. See, I'm creating trust. All of you are going to know everything about me.
Exactly. Boom. Look at this. This is fantastic.
So for myself, I've always been very competitive, and when I was growing up through high school, I played on volleyball competitively. I was always like needed to be the best no matter what I was doing, whether it was basketball, whatever sport I was taking on at the time.
Okay.
I needed to be the star. Like I needed to kill it. And when I wasn't, I would take the criticism from my coaches as if they were coming down on me and I wasn't good enough, and my performance wasn't where it should be, when realistically it's okay to fail. And I think sometimes we always forget that. So fast forwarding a little bit to my days at Michael Kors, where, I learned so much about the person I was then and who I've become now. And I very much applaud the ladies that guided me in the direction I needed to go in. So I can come off a little bit cold at times. I'm not always peachy. I'm not always super happy. And I can be condescending. If I think that you don't understand what it is I'm saying, I could...
At least you admit it.
Okay, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, I'd been like, not a chance, not me. Everyone gets me. But just...
That's incredible.
Just through, my experiences and taking a step back and really focusing on what may have happened and how I could have taken the information a little bit wrongly and maybe jumped the gun. There was plenty of times where I would sit down with my regional manager or district manager and they'd be like, listen, Jolene, you're being a little bit too harsh. And I would, rather than taking the information and trying to form a positive thought about it, I would automatically go to the negative. And through that, I sabotaged my position and where I was in my career because I lost the trust of my colleagues. They didn't want to trust me. They didn't want to have those relationships with me because they weren't sure if I was going to have a temper if they said something wrong or if they didn't do something according to how it should be done. And I really had to realize that not everybody is going to do things my way, and that's okay. And I'm not going to do everything everybody's way. But constructive criticism, it's not negative feedback. It's trying to make people as good and as best possible employees they could be. And that's 100%. Really where now at 33, if I would have known that at 25, who knows where I'd be? Probably New York.
But at least you're looking at it now as a learning opportunity.
Exactly. It was definitely a stepping stone. And I mean, from that experience, I have been able to recreate relationships and work on my areas of opportunity and really create relationships and bonds and trust with people I work with. And some of the people I worked with, I had great relationships with because we had that trust and we could feed off each other and I could take the constructive criticism and realize that it wasn't always all bad and negative. There's positive out of it as well.
Sure.
So that's all amazing, and I completely agree with it. But as now that you're moving on into your career and you're more in that leadership position, how do you flip that in a sense where now you're giving the constructive criticism? Do you kind of take what you've learned about it? And so now when you're passing it on, when you're to me, hey Reese, this video is awesome, except I fucking hate it. How do you
Okay, first of all, I've never told him once that I fucking hate his work. I just want to make sure we're all clear because we did work together and it never came across like that, okay?
No, but how do you no, absolutely.
Side note.
Yeah, side note. But do you ever take your own personal experiences and kind of shift them and be like, okay, now that I'm giving that constructive criticism, do you word it differently now, or do you kind of
1,000%. Yeah, Jolene 6 years ago would have been that's kind of shitty. What were you thinking when you put this together?
Yeah.
But now, there has been things that you've sent me that I haven't totally loved. Yeah. And, it's a question of being so where was your mind when you were thinking this? I was thinking something more like this. Is it possible to create the two together? That's being constructive, but it's also not tearing down.
No, exactly. And another side note, this is exactly why I loved working with you and doing these projects, was because it was never yeah, we don't like that. Let's do something else. It was hey, that shot's cool. However, maybe if you had something like this to kind of tie it more into the story, it gave me a chance to be oh, that actually makes sense, instead of just being yeah, we don't like this. It's why don't you like it? How can I be better? It gives somebody like us the opportunity to understand, because that's, as creatives, our brains are just
absolutely
the whole time, right? So it's when you throw a little wrench in there, then it gets fucking this, and then we're all I fucking hate myself. We're the worst ever, right? And then it's I hate Jolene because she was, but no, not at all. But it was great working with you, because every time you did come back with change or something, it was always with purpose, and it always made sense, and you always explained exactly why you wanted to change it. And so.
And I was also I was the middleman a little bit when it came to working with you, Reese. So some of the feedback that was coming back wasn't necessarily as kosher as it came out when I explained it to you, but that's also taking information from people that are just it fucking sucks. Okay, but you're not really paying attention to everything. Break it down when you say, what do you think sucks in it? It's important to realize not the whole person or situation sucks. Maybe a little 3-second clip or the music or whatever it is might not jive with what you're feeling, but let's break it down. And I think that's a way that you can kind of keep the communication and the level of trust to a maximum.
Absolutely. And that, I think, would speak to a lot more people than we think, at least for me. I feel a lot of people find themselves in the middle because they're trying to make a lot of parties happy, right? So that's I think that's really good advice to people, because
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
asking the right questions, it's breaking it down for both sides so they understand it. But I feel like that's a very learned skill. A lot of experience of,
Well, it has taken a lot, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm perfect, because let me tell you, there are still things I'm working on, that's for sure. When you're working also with a big company, you need to realize not everyone is artistic and not everyone gets that side of the business, whether it be marketing or visuals or how to really make your business go from like level 3 to a level 5 to want to be at a level 8.
Sure.
So you kind of also need to, as anybody in a marketing position or a sales position, not only are you selling to the clients that you want to come in, but you also need to sell your CEO that maybe doesn't get it and is a really good numbers guy and understands like his bottom line and where he wants it. But how are we going to abrupt and make those numbers the numbers you want without just...
How are we going to reach the overall vision?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you're not a marketer or a creative, sometimes it's a little bit challenging for you to see how this stuff can really profit any sort of business. But I mean, the hugest companies, the most successful companies, that's what they do. That's how they get it. It's all social. It's all, how are you going to speak to your clients and how are you going to relay your message through either video or posts or any sort of marketing strategy, correct?
Yeah,
I'm not
for
by
sure.
myself with that one, right?
No,
Not
not at all. Completely agree.
Thank God.
I think like we find ourselves on one side of that because we're trying to deliver something for someone like you to then bring back to whatever the client is wanting, right? So it's cool to see all these different perspectives, right? Because some people we've had are the client, which would be like, we talked to Krista about it on our first one, right? So we see that perspective of like, this is what I want, and it's hard to get that across.
Sure.
And we see our side of things because that's what we live every day. So it's cool to finally like talk to someone who sees like that middle part of it. I don't know, to me, I think that's cool, and I think that's like important information for both sides to learn about, whether it's us or whether it's them, right? So thank you for sharing that.
I should have gone into PR. Just saying.
Yes, I agree.
It's not too late.
Yeah,
It's not too
I was gonna
late.
say, yeah.
You're talking about broadcast before. You can always do
Career
PR.
change again.
Yeah.
There you go. Why not?
That's awesome.
Why not? Mix it
Yeah,
up.
so why do you want to get into broadcasting?
Yeah.
You're doing a great job right now.
Yeah, for sure. I was reading your bio, and I noticed that you wanted to get into teaching at some point. And I'm getting into teaching, so I just wondered what your thought process was in that and why you decided not to, or if you still want to.
Well, funny enough, every so often I will say to my mom, I should just go to teacher's college. I should just do it. Don't stop. Keep on going. Keep on going. Seriously. My entire...
I hate my life.
I mean,
entire life growing up, I mean, since the time I was probably 6 years old to even now, like I said, I still think about it. My ultimate goal was to become a teacher. When I was little, I used to, in my bathroom, we had tiles on the floor. Look, guys, I'm going to get very vulnerable with you. You're going to find something out about me.
This is how we build trust.
And when I would be going to the bathroom as like a 6-year-old, I would pretend that like the squares were different students in my class, and I would be the teacher telling them.
That's incredible. I'm a visual person, so I'm just,
yeah.
just
Other than the fact that you were going to the washroom at the
Surprise.
same time, yeah. It's very intriguing.
And like 15 minutes later, my mom would knock on the door and be like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "You can't interrupt my class." And she'd be like, "What?"
Oh my god.
So like,
I thought you were talking to Ghost or some shit. She's like,
My child's possessed.
yeah.
so anything I could turn into a classroom, I would, no matter what it was. Matilda was a movie that was out when
That's
I
why
was
you're a
little.
control freak, right?
That's why I'm a little bit of a control freak. Exactly. See, the old Jolene would have gotten upset about that, but I understand.
Now you're just honest with
Yeah, now I'm just honest. Matilda. Did you guys ever see the movie
Yep.
Matilda? That movie was a thing.
You
When
haven't seen Matilda?
That's unfortunate.
Movie night.
Some
No,
film
I'm just
guy.
kidding.
Yeah, it's on Netflix
Film school.
right now.
Film school.
So Miss Honey was a teacher that was on Matilda, and she wore these glasses, and my mom had sunglasses that looked like her glasses, and I forced her to give them to me. I cut out the lens, like I took the lenses out, and I'd wear them as glasses, and I would go around and I'd force my sisters to like let me teach them. So it was just something that was, I just thought that was it for me. Like I was going to be a teacher. It was set out. When I was 18, my grandmother passed away, and she used to always say to me, like, "Jolene, you have to go to school to be a teacher. That's what you're meant to do." My mom would say it. So always in my mind, the only thing that I was going to do was be a teacher. I got accepted to all the universities I applied to. Ottawa U was my number one choice. I went there the summer after my grandmother had passed away. Well, the next year.
Okay.
So I just don't think I was in the right state of mind to put a stamp on what the rest of my life was going to be. My first year was a little bit wild. I mean, isn't everyone's first year of college or university a little bit wild?
No, I was just straight grinded, not me.
No way, you're just that good.
No.
You guys are just so awesome. Well, this one over here,
My first
again,
video at
being
Brock.
honest with everyone.
My first video at Brock was about Frosh Week, so
That explains
I was
it.
in it a lot.
I was like, have you even outgrown that yet? I saw you St. Patrick's Day video.
Yes, but that was just for friends. Smoke bomb.
So I met this boy who I was in classes with, and we just started to.
cute.
Yeah, he's gay. Okay, he's one of my very dear gay friends.
Gotcha.
We just like started to explore the fashion world, and he was actually in his 4th year of criminal science, and he was going back to Montreal, and he's like, listen, like, I'm going to take this fashion marketing program. I think you should come too. I was at a little bit of like a crossroads in my life where I was trying to be a little bit of a rebel. I did not want to listen to what my mom had to say to me ever. I was like, you don't know what's best for me, so just stop talking.
Princess Leia in the flesh. Rebellion.
She like actually tried to force me to come back to Brock. She promised me the world. She was like, if you just come back to Brock, I'll buy you a brand new car. Like,
wow.
just stay
Damn.
focused.
I would have jumped on that.
I was like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
So one day I got a phone call, and she's like, I got something in the mail here for LaSalle College. You've been accepted into a fashion marketing program. And I'm like, surprise, I'm moving to Montreal next year.
Interesting.
Yeah, she got in the car and drove to Ottawa and packed up my stuff, and it was like, get in the fucking car.
Come on.
Wow.
Yeah.
She Italian or what?
She's not. She's Irish.
Oh,
Interesting.
I don't know what's
Little
scarier.
redhead firecracker,
Yeah, I was
that
gonna
one.
say.
That's where the aggression comes from. There you go.
Fire
Explains it.
She's amazing, though.
Yeah.
So it was a summer of hell. I rebelled even more that summer.
Naturally.
Yeah, and then I went into fashion marketing, and I don't regret it. I actually shaped up when I was in Montreal, changed everything around. I worked full time. I always had an internship. So it was like I had 2 full-time jobs. I went to school full time. I really focused on, I had to prove to my mom that this is really what I wanted. I graduated on the top of my class. So it was great. When I came back after I finished, before I started with Michael Kors, I contemplated going back to teacher's college. And there was just something about, I always wanted to work with high school students. And just, I had very phenomenal teachers. I went to Jean Monnet, so I went to a very small high school. There were 69 students when I graduated. Like, we were tiny.
Yeah.
So we had really good relationships with the teachers. And I had 2 teachers, Monsieur and Madame Desjardins, who were phenomenal individuals. And I looked up to them, and they guided me a lot through high school. And I wanted to be that person for kids, because I think sometimes when we're teenagers, we get lost. You know, we have your family that's telling you got to do one thing, and then you have your friends, and then you have these people who you think are your friends, but they're just, these little insects that come in your life. And there are so many kids now that just don't know how to cope with anything. And I think it has a lot to do with not having that person to guide them.
Yeah, 100%.
In that relationship. And I think, once again, it comes back to trust. I know, man, this whole thing is
Everything is trust.
Sorry,
No,
guys.
No,
That's
it's
completely
great.
true.
It's a good theme.
It's completely true. Yeah, but trust is a huge thing, because that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get into teaching, is because I had 2 big mentors in high school, and that kind of made me want to be that mentor for other kids, because they helped propel me into what we're doing now. So I completely understand that.
It's so important when you're a young adult and you have that person standing behind you that's holding up the pedestal for you to step on, and just showing you how great you can be. And there's always 2 types of teachers. There's those teachers that are there for the 8 to 4 job, who are just there.
For sure.
And then there are those teachers that give their all. And still, even to this day, I feel I translate that into wherever I'm working. I like to help people see their potential and how great they can be.
For sure.
I don't think you just have to be a teacher to be a mentor to somebody. I had a great mentor. She was, I did a PR internship in Montreal, and she was phenomenal. She was only maybe 3 years older than me. But she just had this aura about her that I wanted to eat, breathe, everything like her. And I learned a lot from her. So I think at any stage in your life, there's always going to be that person. But back then I thought that the only way to do it was to be a teacher. But I've learned since that, nope, you could be anywhere and do
But
the
I
same
also
thing.
feel like you're indirectly teaching people through what you do right now. You know what I mean? Like even just us working together, like I learned a ton from you, just the way you communicated, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's like, it's almost like it's ingrained in you that like you carry that with you. Like I feel like we're the same way. You know what I mean? Like when we're on set, whatever we're doing, it's like we just do our thing. And this is how I learned from my mentor as well. Like he just did his thing and then everyone else is soaking it up, but it's on them to actually soak it up, right? So for us, like at least for me, like I go into every situation, what can I learn from a person, instead of being like, what can I do for them or this and that. It's like, you know what I mean? Every engagement you're learning something, right? So you don't have to just be like, oh, I'm a teacher. It's like, okay, I'm doing this, but I'm like leading people in this industry or whatever it is, right?
I agree with you. I think knowledge is power, and I think you never should get to a position in your career or your personal life where you feel like you know everything, where you're just the greatest. Because I think at that point there, you lose yourself and you lose concept of everything. And that's when you start losing people and you don't have a team anymore and you're not engaging. You don't have people that want to work with you. I don't like to use the term for you as a manager because I don't think anyone should work for you. I think you're getting to a goal together. So you can learn so much from every sort of person out there. And I think that's a good attitude to have going into things. Just being like, what out of everything can I learn from this person?
For sure. And I think some of the smartest people I know are the ones who are the hungriest to learn stuff.
Absolutely.
Because they just keep going. And then that's what makes them the smartest. I'm like, how do you know all this shit? I'm like, your brain, like, how does it fit all this stuff?
Right?
It's like, another thing about like mentors as well, though, like I find the best mentors are the ones who aren't always going to tell you good job.
Absolutely.
And the ones who aren't always going to be like, you know, that looks like really good. They're like, that looked like shit.
Absolutely.
And, you know, again, like we can use our relationship as an example in terms of like when we worked together. Like it wasn't just like, oh yeah, it looks good. And I remember like even the first time we met and we were talking about all those ideas and we were walking around that event, like, you know, we were instantly just like, okay, like I like this. And then you're like, well, I don't know about that because it's this. But I was like, oh, okay, like that makes sense, right? And then like we were kind of almost like teaching each other about like what the vision was like. How are you? And so it was the same thing like with Mihai or anybody like that who like is in that, I don't know, position to like help you and like teach you all this stuff, but they're never gonna be like, oh yeah, like that's perfect. There's always something that you can get better on, right? And I think
100%.
that's what a great mentor is all about, at least, because I know some people who are just like, oh yeah, you know, I'm doing a good job. It's like, but what can you do better?
Exactly. I don't
Yeah,
think
they
it's
never
always
challenge themselves.
Exactly. I don't think it's about fluffing somebody up. I don't think it's about making them seem like no matter what they touch is gold. For instance, Madame and Monsieur Desjardins, the two people I was talking about from my high school years, he used to tell me all the time, he was my volleyball coach. He used to say to me, like, your temper is going to destroy you. Like, you need to relax. There'd be times that, like, he would see me throw a badminton racket, and he's like, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you getting so worked up? And I had to learn, like, take it down. Like, get a grip on life. Like, whoa. Like, fuck, it doesn't matter that you lost. Like, relax. But he used to tell me all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, even if I got the point or I got this, like, whatever the situation was, he would always point out my temper. He's like, good job. And he used to call me JOLENE because he thought it was funny. So he'd call me JOLENE. He'd be like, bun job, JOLENE, but your temper, you know? And I'd be like, oh, my God. But I've learned from it. Like, I've learned how to think before I speak and before I act. Because when I was 22, there was no thinking.
Just acting.
Ever.
That's it.
Just acting.
Now, like, were you able, this is kind of like, well, not off topic, but like, were you able to ever channel that anger into like a positive thing now? Like, have you learned to like...
Well, I have, I've gotten myself into a little bit of stressful situations, and, you know, my life doesn't go always as planned. Like, it's not that it's just been a bed of rainbows and butterflies, that's for sure. I like to channel my anger at the gym. So I find myself going to the gym like sometimes twice a day. If I'm starting to get very anxious, I'll be like, no, I got to go to the gym. So what I've started to do is I've started to release that tension by working out as hard as I can.
Cool.
So that's how I do it.
It's a good way.
Yeah, it doesn't work for everybody. But for me, it's something that really breaks my anxiety and really gets rid of those negative thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think everyone should have an outlet. Like, I know, at least for me and us, well, you know, for me, it's like when I get pissed off, it's like I need to like plan something.
Yeah.
Like I just get into the
Yeah,
zone and I
100%.
just like start going and I'm like, okay,
It's a motivating
I'm gonna
factor.
destroy everybody kind of thing, right? And I'm like, how can I be better? How can I make the business better? How can I make myself better? And then you just like start rolling like that, right? So
I also think it's super important to have a plan for yourself. Like you said, like you couldn't have said it better. How can I be better? I think we always want to prove to people that are around us how great we are, but I think who we really need to make proud is ourselves. And I think everybody forgets that. Everybody.
100%, absolutely.
And we're so busy on being like, well, what am I going to do to make Joe see how amazing I am at my job? But at the end of the day, in 45 years, is Joe really going to care how great you did at your job? No.
Has Joe even thought about you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
And are you going to give a shit about Joe?
Not one bit. But you know
Exactly.
who you're going to care about? And
Yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think rather than proving a point to other people, you need to start proving a point to yourself. And that's something I've literally learned in the last 6 months.
Well, that's good that you learned it though.
Right?
Yeah. So have you
I
been
mean, it's
taking
very wise
steps
advice.
towards like
I have. So I write down like weekly goals. Like I used to put a lot of pressure on myself where I'd be like, I need to do this in a week. But like I was setting myself up for failure because it's unrealistic. I mean, I'm a single mom. I work full time. I actually have side hustles. So I'm always busy. And setting all these goals per like ridiculous amount of goals were just starting to swallow me. And,
yeah, and psychologically, once you start failing those goals, then you start getting down on yourself.
exactly.
Right?
And then
It's just a spiral.
everything was just falling out of place. So I just started to pick one or two things that I really wanted to focus on, whether it was, now this is, you guys are gonna be like, oh my God, but I have a shopping problem. Look at me also being trusting with you guys.
The trust we're going today is unbelievable.
I know. And more so with my daughter's wardrobe. It's ridiculous. So I had said to myself, I'm going to clean out her closet. Like she has a walk-in closet and she's 5 years old. So every week
I don't even have a walk-in closet. Never have.
I don't have a walk-in closet either. I have
You have
3
a door on my
closets.
closet. Just part of the room.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so funny. So I had set to just clean out her closet and I accomplished it. But had I the JOLENE 6 months ago, I'm like, I need to clean out her closet. I need to buy her a whole new wardrobe. I need to clean out my closet. I need to clean out my house. I might as well clean out my cupboards. But that's just unrealistic. And it's the same professionally or personally. I think when you have that work-life balance and you're setting realistic goals, anybody can conquer anything.
For sure. But that's, again, just, I think the theme of this whole talk too has just been being honest with yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the themes I think that keeps coming up is when you're honest with yourself, it's a hard thing to do because you have to ask yourself the hard questions. But once you get over that, then you're like, okay, now I know who I am. Now I know what I need to do for myself to get to my goals, right? So
The other thing I read in your bio, since I don't know you, and I'm basing everything off that.
Did you also look at my Facebook?
No.
Thank God.
Uh-oh.
It's okay. I'm just joking.
Should I now?
No, I'm just joking. I don't actually post a lot on there.
Okay, neither do I, so.
amazing.
None of it.
Yeah, so like you said, you love to empower teams and also youth. So I was just wondering how you go about doing that. Is it through mentorship? Is it through just trying to set an example for them? I know you have a daughter, which I literally just learned. So like, is that...
Yes, you know what? It's so funny. Sorry to cut you off.
No.
After I sent the bio to Reese, I was like, I completely left out one of my biggest accomplishments, and that's being a mom. Like, that's a big deal. I think
That's
sometimes
100%.
we don't applaud women. Like, you know, single, not single. Like, even if you're have a family, that woman's in charge of everything. Let's be honest.
Yeah, no doubt.
Absolutely.
I love you guys, but like, women are just a little bit more in charge.
Agreed.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. we're on the same page as you. Don't worry.
Perfect. That's the exact way I
Not
wanted
that I have
to.
a kid, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Can't relate to that.
I know. So I was like, I completely forgot to mention I'm such a dork. But
Congratulations. You're
I know.
amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, honestly.
She's never listening to this. No, I'm just joking. You know, I come from a family of 5 girls. I have 4 sisters, and I'm the youngest. 2 of my sisters, they both had kids, and I was relatively young. I was only 12.
Okay.
And that has to do with the age gap between us. So I kind of grew up also alongside of them, and I got to watch them grow and help them realize how great of individuals they are. You know, my one nephew right now, I see him every day, and he's struggling with what he wants to do and where he wants to be in life. And, you know, once again, coming back to that pressure that the society puts on you that, at 18, you need to decide what it is you want to do with life. You have to go to college and university and get a job and start a family. But like, that is all bullshit. I'm sorry. Like, no one's life goes like that. No one's life is that peachy. And I just like, I have to sometimes say to him, like, who cares what people say, Day? Like, if this is what you want to do right now, do your thing. Like, it will come to you one day. And if one day you want to be a customs officer, you can go back to school at 33.
Go for it. Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And I just see there's so much pressure on youth. I think the way we can help them is stop making them feel like they're inadequate, that their opinion doesn't matter.
Yep.
True.
That sometimes there's the old mentality of you do as I say, not what I do. Like, I'm not sure if your parents ever said that to you.
100%. Yeah.
I don't agree with that. I don't. I think I can learn from my daughter just as much as I can teach her. So I don't like to be like, no, this is the way you do things. This is how it has to be done, because that's not true. There's a million ways how things can be done.
Like, why are you doing it this way? So
Exactly.
I don't know how. Yeah.
You know those like maze games that you do, and there's like one way to get to the end result? No, that's not. No. Somebody's end result might take 16 paths across the train track. Who knows? But creating that...
I like that.
Creating that, like, no, there's only one path, I think is the worst thing that anyone has done for any youth. And I think that's a huge problem that we saw there, because everyone was so focused on, nope, this is how it has to be. I think with the younger generation, you need to, once again, just explain to them that, like, set out goals for yourself and don't make them unrealistic. And, if your goal is just to wake up every day and think of a positive thought, don't compare yourself to Billy over there, who's the basketball all-star, who's being looked at by 6 colleges, and think that just because you're getting up every day and, only thinking of a positive thought, it's not just as good as Billy.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge thing that we need to
It's a very progressive way of looking at things, and like that's a very educational thing for you to say. So that's another teacherly aspect I'm picking up on.
Okay, so am I applying to Brock as a student?
Correct.
I think you've already accomplished your goal, if I'm being honest.
Oh my God, thank you so
you're
much,
welcome.
Ben.
It's a really good point. Yeah, for real. Like I mentioned earlier, like I feel like you're naturally just teaching people, whether you're like seeing it as like I am teaching someone here, like you're just being you, which is people
100%. I think your daughter's going to benefit from that.
Thank you so much.
She's very lucky.
Hey, you're welcome.
Guys, oh my God. This is too much now. Let's talk about something else.
All right.
I'm getting uncomfortable. My hands are sweating.
Okay. I think like just the last couple of things I wanted to talk about were just like, I was going to ask like, if you had any advice for, younger creators or entrepreneurs, but you literally just gave it, I think. Unless you had something else that you wanted to say. But
I mean, the same thing. I mean, once again, like I think in any industry, and I'm guilty of it as well, comparing yourself to people. You can't do that, because what so-and-so is doing, you don't know the steps it took them to get there. You don't know the failures they had. Nobody broadcasts their failures. People broadcast positive thoughts, their successes. It's just the way we do things. I never sit here and say any of my failures. Like I've had tons of failures in life, like tons. My life is not perfect. But I think what young entrepreneurs or anybody, even like starting a business, 10 years in their business, do it once again for yourself, not for the competition of who's out there or who's doing this at this time, because all it takes is one person to see one thing and your entire career can change in the blink of an eye.
Sure.
So I think that's important to remember as young professionals on any level.
It's very true. I like that.
That's great.
And to honestly like go off that exact point, like I can honestly say that I'm an example of that, because when I was about to drop out of school, like I started working with Mihai, and I went up to him and I'm like, hey man, can I do some videos for basketball? He's like, nope, I have a video guy. And I'm like, well, can I just come in and like shoot just for practice? I'll send you the video for free. He's like, okay, yeah. I'm like, no problem. So shot the video, sent it to him. The next day he fired his video guy, and like, I don't know if I need to tell the rest of the story, but basically started traveling the world with him after that, which is kind of what led up to like Instillment being built up as like the sports, like videography stuff. So I mean, like you said, all it takes is one moment.
Exactly.
Don't compare yourself.
For sure.
And you didn't give up. You didn't give up as soon as he told you, no, he has somebody. You weren't like, okay. You were like, okay, well, can I just do it to do it? Just to have, even if it's just for myself.
Yeah.
Just to see where I'm at. But look, it got you.